Hello everyone, Ahlan bikum. Welcome to a new video of my channel Azahara Letters. Today's video makes me very excited. I've been studying Arabic for many years and to show you the Arabic alphabet is something that fills me with joy. To write Arabic calligraphy, these writing instruments are used. They are called qalam. They are usually made of bamboo and they are used for calligraphy works as beautiful as this. However, let's start at the beginning. Before we start with artistic Arabic calligraphy, let's begin by learning how to write the Arabic alphabet with a type of calligraphy similar to thuluth and using a flat tip pen. You can use a pilot parallel pen or you can use a thick calligraphy pen. Can be read here, qalam khat Arabi 3mm. It is said Arabic calligraphy pen 3mm. The most important thing to know is that Arabic letters are written differently depending on whether they are written alone or isolated, at the beginning of a word, in the middle of the word, or at the end. Sometimes it also depends on which letter precedes it and which letter follows, but we will see that in another video maybe. Let's start with the alif. It is like a long stick in its isolated and initial shape. In the middle or at the end, it will depend on the letter before it, if it joins or not. We are going to do as if it joins. Letter ba. The letter ba is like drawing a shark or a ball that has only one dot underneath. To write the initial ba, we take the form of the beginning of the letter in his isolated shape and we add a dot below it. For the middle ba, it is only a short stick with a dot underneath, although it has some input and output ligature, and in his final shape, the isolated letter is recovered. Letter ta. The base of this letter is the same as the ba. What makes it special is that it has two dots at the top. You can remember it because it's like a smiley. The initial, final, and isolated shapes are the same as in the previous letter, but with the two dots at the top. The letter tha is the same as the previous two, but has 3 points on top. They can be seen as rhombuses and they form a kind of triangle. The next is the letter jim, and it's written like this. One wave to the right and a large curvature to the left. Notice that it has a dot in the middle. For the initial jim, we take the top of the isolated form and we add a dot under it. The same as for the jim in the middle of the word, but adding ligatures before and after. In the final position, take back the isolated shape. The shape of the letter ha is the same as that of the jim, but it has no dot. In the rest of the position, it is the same as in the previous one, but without adding any dot. The letter Ha is the same as the two previous ones, but the dot is at the top, so we repeat the same shapes, adding the dot at the top. The following is the letter Dal, and it's written like this. It is easier than the previous ones. It's like drawing half of a guitar pick, but turned upside down. The letter Dal joins the previous one, so it has a ligature, but it does not join the next one. It stays like this. The Dal in its final position is the same. The letter Val is the same as the previous one, but with a dot at the top, so it's a matter of repeating it. The letter Ra in its isolated form is like this. In its initial shape, it is the same. In the middle, it is joined to the previous one with this ligature, but it's not joined to the following one, therefore it remains like this. In its final position, the same thing happened. The letter Zaid, it's written exactly the same as Ra in all its position, but has a dot above it. The letter Sin in its isolated form is like drawing three sacks, two small ones and a bigger one. In its initial position, it is two small sacks and a ligature. In its middle position, it rises three times, resembling waves. And its final position, it recovers its isolated shape. The letter Shin is the same as the letter Sin, only it has three dots on top forming a triangle. So all the shapes are repeated and three dots are added to form a triangle, as in the letter Tha. Letter Sod. In its isolated position, a kind of teardrop or droplet is drawn lying down, then it is raised a little bit and a big bag is drawn. In its initial position, only the first part of the letter is drawn and a ligature is added. In the middle position, it is the same, but with the initial stroke. And in the final position, it recovers the isolated form. It's really wonderful. The letter Dot is the same as Sod, but with a dot above it. Therefore, we repeat the same shape and put a dot on the top. The letter Ta is like drawing an eye and then putting the mast of a sail on top of it. The initial is the same as the isolated one, but with a ligature in his final stroke. The middle is the same but with an inward and outward ligature. And the final, the same but without ligature at the end. The letter do is the same as the letter to, but without a dot above, so we repeat the same shapes. The letter Ain is quite curious. In its isolated position, it's like drawing an uppercase cursive E or an upside-down number 3. As in other letters, in the initial shape it recovers the upper part of the letter. In its middle form, it changes quite a lot. It is different as you can see, and in its final position, it keeps the upper part of the middle one, but the lower part of the isolated form reappears. The letter Ghain is written the same as Ain, but has a dot above it, so we repeat the forms by adding a dot above it. The letter Fa has the shape of a small almond, and then we add an elongated shape to the left and one point above. The initial shape is the same but with the outgoing stroke to make the ligature. The middle shape is just like a round with a dot, and in its final position it returns to the same shape of the isolated letter. The letter Qaf is similar as the letter Fa, but has two dots on top, so we repeat the same shapes, but adding 2 points above. The letter Kaf has a small diagonal to the left and then a curvature. The Hamza symbol, which we will see at the end, is added in the middle in its isolated form. Both in its initial and middle position, it has the same shape as the isolated one, but without the Hamza in the middle and with the pertinent ligature. In his final shape, it's again the same as the isolated one and with the Hamza in the middle. The letter Lam is like drawing a kind of hook. In its initial position, it is like an upside down letter L. In its middle form, it only goes up one stick, and in its final position, it is the same as in the isolated one. The letter Mim in its isolated position is like drawing a needle with a very large eye. In the initial position, it's like this. In the middle position, it's like a seed that remains between two ligatures. And in its final position, it recovers its isolated form. The letter Nun, isolated, is like drawing a bag with a lot of bottom and has a dot at the top and in the middle. In its initial position, it is just a stick with a dot at the top. Pay attention, it is easy to confuse it with a ba. In its middle position, it's again a stick with a dot at the top but with ligatures. And in its final position, it returns the sack shape with the dot in the middle. The letter H, in its initial form, it reminds me an at sign flipped or overturned. In its initial position, it's similar, but in the middle form it changed completely, going down and up in this way as if it were a loop. In its final position it also has a different shape. The top of the letter Waw has the shape similar to the Fa, but has a downward curve. In its initial form, it is the same as the isolated one because it never joins the next one. In its middle form, it is the same, but with the inward stroke. But note, it has not outward stroke. In its final shape, it is the same as in the middle one. The letter Ya in its isolated shape reminds me a snake. It is very curvy. It changed a lot in its initial form. It is just a stick with two dots underneath. In the middle shape, it is only a ligature, a stick and a salient ligature, always with two dots. In its final position, the shape of the isolated one is seen again. The Hamza is a complicated letter because sometimes it goes by itself, sometimes it needs a support. Hamza alone is written like this, which is the small symbol that we have seen in the isolated kaf. Sometimes it is written on top of an alif. Sometimes on top of a small stick, which is called the chair of the Hamza. It can also go on top of a waw and on top of a ya with a dot. It is called alif maqsura. This is all. I know it's a bit long video, but very substantial, isn't it? I hope you like it and it has helped you. If so, thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to hit the little bell because I will continue uploading videos of artistic Arabic calligraphy. Thanks for watching and see you soon. مع السلامة. إلى اللقاء.